Cade Klubnik back at quarterback for the Clemson Tigers, and this season he is one of the favorites to contend for the Heisman Trophy. Not to mention that Dabo Sweeney finally used the transfer portal, which means that Clemson has a shot at competing for a national title once again. Taking a look at their schedule, got a really tough game to open out the season at home. A battle between two of the early Heisman favorites. I already mentioned Cade Klubnik. LSU has Garrett Nussmeier. This is going to be a great way to start off the season.
Without a doubt, like you said, you got two of the most prolific quarterbacks in college football today squaring off in week one in one of the best stadium environments in the country. And I don't know. I've seen a lot of hype around LSU, how this defense has started to really take shape and looks like they're going to be a really solid core. And we obviously know offensively LSU is great every single year. But this Clemson team, honestly, they might have three top five picks in the NFL draft next year based off of needs and talent. Cade Klubnik, as you mentioned, Heisman front runner right now, along with Garrett Nussmeier and Arch Manning. But that's without mentioning their top five draft talent on the defensive side of the ball, TJ Parker and Peter Woods. It's one thing to have a phenomenal playmaker on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball individually, but when you have it on both sides, it's going to be unreal. This Clemson team, like you said, is in the best shape possible to compete for a national championship since the Trevor Lawrence days.
Yeah, I think this game against LSU, though, it's going to be really close, but really the defensive talent for Clemson, I think, is actually what's going to push them just over the edge. I like Clemson here to open out the season with a win.
I do too, and I think another little just history thing that's going for them. I think LSU has lost either 4 or 5 years in a row their season opener, and unless they can get it together against a very good Clemson team, I think they're going to continue that streak. Week two is against Troy, and like we were saying for LSU, this Clemson team is going to be really, really good, and Troy is not going to have much of a chance in this one. They're just outclassed in basically every single position. So, an easy win for the Tigers at home here. And then they go into a very interesting matchup on the road against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is one of those teams that we are very high on going into next season. Think that they actually have a decent chance at making a ACC conference title run because they have Haynes King returning, because their offense is getting reloaded using the transfer portal, particularly in the wide receiver room with Eric Rivers coming in from FIU. I just really think after what we saw Georgia Tech capable of last season with their win over Miami and their near win over Georgia, that returning so much of that starting core, this is going to be a very interesting game early on in the season for this Clemson team and for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be another really close game. Tough way to start out the season for Clemson with both LSU and then Georgia Tech here in a sneaky good one. The fact that it's on the road is also going to make it a little bit tougher, but I trust Dabo a little bit more. I like Clemson to move to 3-0 here on the road, but don't count out Georgia Tech just yet. Next up is going to be a matchup against Syracuse back at home. This one we're pretty confident in Clemson. Syracuse lost Kyle McCord to the NFL draft, and the replacement just not going to be nearly as good. They're going to throw the ball a lot, like we saw last year, but most likely going to be a lot more interceptions. I think this one gets out of hand pretty quickly. Clemson will move to 4-0 heading into their first bye week.
Coming out of that bye week, they have probably one of the most intriguing matchups of the season, not necessarily for the players on the field, but for the head coaching matchup. You got Dabo Sweeney taking on Bill Belichick on the road, and North Carolina's been building a pretty good team. I don't know if they're quite ready to compete just yet. I think some of the hype is a little too much. Like some people are saying, oh, they're going to win the ACC. They're going to make a college football playoff appearance. I think they're at least a year out, maybe two, but I'd like to see how Bill Belichick really fits into the college football atmosphere. But I think once again, Clemson's going to be able to get the job done on the road here. I think North Carolina is dealing with some outside issues, basically with Bill Belichick, but I think that the talent is going to be in Clemson's favor.
I think this will again, it has the potential to be a good game, but I would feel better about, somebody like Georgia Tech upsetting Clemson than North Carolina. I think once again, the Tigers will get the win here. Even though it's on the road, definitely has the potential to be a really good game. But I just think that, the Tar Heels aren't quite ready to compete with the perennial college football powerhouses such as Clemson. The next matchup, also pretty intriguing with Boston College in year two under Bill O'Brien. He was expected to turn things around pretty quickly, and I don't know if he's quite going to be able to do that, though I do expect to see a little improvement from Boston College. Thomas Castellanos, however, was not able to stay with the program. He transferred to Florida State, which means that Boston College is hurting a little bit in the quarterback room. So I do think that, again, Clemson, clearly the more talented team. This could potentially be a signature win for Bill O'Brien. I just don't really see it. So we like Clemson to move to 6-0 here once again on the road.
It could be interesting considering that Castellanos was dealing with injuries all of last season, and Boston College still had a pretty decent record. They finished 7-6, 4-4 in the conference. So there's definitely still potential for Boston College there, but I think with the amount they have to replace in year two for Bill O'Brien, I think it's just going to be a little too much, especially for a team, like you said, like Clemson, that is the perennial college football playoff team for the ACC. Speaking of college football playoff teams, we have SMU, the regular season champs in the ACC last year, but did lose to Clemson in that conference title game. I think this is going to be an electric rematch. It's going to be at Clemson, which obviously the home field advantage is going to carry a lot of weight here. But SMU returning Kevin Jennings, which is always a big part to teams' continued success if you have a starting quarterback returning. And they've been pretty active in the transfer portal as well. Obviously, this great season they had in 2024 is going to carry a lot of weight and get players wanting to come to the program and be a part of something special. I don't know if SMU is going to be in playoff contention again. Their schedule's a little difficult, especially with Clemson on their schedule, but this could be once again a intriguing game because SMU, like I said, is a college football playoff team from last year and returning a good amount of starting production. But at the end of the day, I trust Kate Klubnik more than I trust Kevin Jennings, especially after we saw what Clemson was able to do in the conference championship.
I do like Kevin Jennings, and I think he has the ability to keep them in this game. But like we saw in the college football playoff, he can also be the reason that SMU lets the game get out of hand way too quickly. So, kind of like Connor was just saying, I trust Cade Klubnik and Clemson more, especially with the home field advantage. So, undefeated heading into their second bye week, and after that, facing Darian Mensah and the Duke Blue Devils at home. This going to be another pretty good game, I think. Duke, we've seen outperform expectations back-to-back seasons now, including 2 years ago when they first upset Clemson to start the year with Riley Leonard at quarterback. He moved on to Notre Dame last year, and they had another great season with Malik Murphy at quarterback. Now he transferred to Oregon State, and they brought in Darian Mensah from Tulane, paying him a significant amount of NIL money, around $2 million a year. I think, again, Duke probably going to outperform expectations. Does that include a win on the road against Clemson? Most likely not, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. For right now, though, we do like the Tigers to move to 8-0 after this game.
Once again, Clemson's just going to be the more talented team here. Their wide receiver core, which we haven't really touched on here, is very young, but still very productive. I think as they continue to reach their peak and get older and more experienced, they're going to become lethal weapons for Cade Klubnik. And I just think Duke is going to be outmatched here, especially like you said, with it being a road game for the Blue Devils. Then we have Florida State. Florida State after a abysmal year, finishing 2-10 after their undefeated regular season being left out of the college football playoffs, looking to rebuild a little bit. Like we said with Boston College earlier, they're bringing in Thomas Castellanos from BC to be their starting quarterback. And along with Castellanos, they're bringing in a lot of weapons for him out of the transfer portal and through the recruiting class. I think Florida State is going to rebound and be a significantly better team. Are they ready to compete for the ACC title again? I don't think so. I think they're like North Carolina, at least a year out. They need a kind of a middle ground season. They need to be in that like Duke North Carolina tier, quite honestly. They need to be in the middle of the pack before they can start competing once again. And again, against Clemson, with that good of a defense, it's not going to matter how much Thomas Castellanos is going to be able to do. So I think they move to 9-0 here.
Yeah, a lot of it really does depend on Castellanos. And for Florida State to contend in the ACC, he would really need a Heisman level season, which I just don't really think is very likely with him being his first year in the program and such. The next matchup at Louisville is going to be a really tough game, though. Miller Moss transferring in from USC after Tyler Shuff went to the NFL draft. Louisville overall going to be a pretty solid team in 2025. I think that they actually have some serious potential to pull off an upset. And in this game, we are going to go with the home team. Give me the Cardinals to upset Clemson at home.
This is definitely going to be a game that Cardinals fans are going to have circled on their calendar, considering that Louisville beat Clemson last year, and that one was on the road. And now they're coming back home to play Clemson, who, in our predictions, is going to be 9-0 at this point, and very likely could be the number one or number two team in the country. And I think they, like you said, have the potential to pull off that upset. Is Miller Moss better than Tyler Shuff? No, but I think he has a lot of chances to develop over the course of the season to be a very good starter for Louisville, along with the weapons they have around him. And I think that home field advantage is just going to be what tips the scales ever so slightly in the Cardinals' favor.
Yeah, and kind of just this is more of this isn't necessarily a knock on Clemson as much as it is a really reality check on the parity that we see in college football now. Not really any team is able to go undefeated. There's maybe two or three teams every year who I would say are talented enough to actually pull it off. Clemson is one of them, but just all likelihood says they are going to lose a game somewhere. And Louisville really just ends up being that game. I think it's going to be really, really close, but at some point, this undefeated season will likely come to an end for the Tigers.
And another factor in that is that we haven't even finished the schedule yet, but looking at all these teams, we said that every single team basically has a chance against Clemson, not because Clemson's not good, but because all the teams, like you said, the parity is very thin now. All the teams Clemson have to play have potential. They have very good players on their roster that can make differences. It's just a matter of will they or can the unsung heroes rise up and make that difference. So at some point in the season, there's going to be a small slip up against a good team, and I think it's just the perfect scenario for Louisville to pull off that upset there. Moving ahead to the following week, their last home game of the year against Furman. There's no scenario where they lose this. Even if they come off the loss against Louisville, they're going to be down in the dumps for 10 seconds and then they're going to move on, focus on the rest of the season. And Furman's just going to be another step on the way to hopefully a college football playoff berth. Finally, to close out the season, they have the South Carolina Gamecocks, the in-state rivalry. This is going to be a phenomenal game. South Carolina winning this game last year. Once again, this is much like the Louisville game where the opposing team won on the road and now it's coming back to their home stadium to face Clemson. This it really could go either way. I like South Carolina more than Louisville because Lenora Sellers is probably the dark horse favorite for Heisman, and their pass rush was lethal last year. They have freak athletes at every single position on the field. It all the cards are lining up for South Carolina to finally make the college football playoffs after they were so close last year. But this is one of the games where I think Clemson's going to be able to get the revenge. I think Clemson is going to go into South Carolina after that Louisville loss and get a huge win to end the season.
Yeah, this is going to be, like Connor was just saying, another really, really good game. And yes, South Carolina is better than Louisville, but this is going to be a huge rebound win for Clemson. Again, really, really close game, but I like Cade Klubnik a little bit more than Lenora Sellers. Winning this game on the road is going to be tough, but it's certainly not impossible for Clemson, and I do think that they will be able to pull it off and get to 11-1. Our way too early projection for the Tigers was 9.05 wins, and we predicted them to go 10-2. Obviously, as you can see, that prediction has changed a little bit as we have upped it to 11-1, 8-1 in the ACC. Projected win total also took a slight jump from 9.05 to 9.25 wins, with 6.1 being in the ACC. Now, their floor for this season, I do think, is going to be 8-4 with two losses in the ACC. So obviously, that would include a loss to South Carolina as well as LSU, and then two ACC losses, most likely, Louisville, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, some combination of two out of those three. However, the ceiling is undefeated. Clemson is one of very, very few teams that I do believe has the talent to go 12-0. I just don't think that's something that really is going to happen as much as we were used to seeing back in the 14 playoff era before the transfer portal was a thing. Most likely, a lot of these top teams in the country are going to go 11-1, and that is exactly what we are predicting for the Clemson Tigers. So, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.